They call them the mostly unemployed youth or underemployed youth, um, the motorcycle people. And he's going out into the countryside. He's going out into the Amerindian communities, and he is attracting some attention in those communities. He's going out at Indian communities as well, communities where where Indians are dominant. Like for example, it was Leguan, and I saw a pretty good crowd at Leguan of Indian people, all in blue shirts. Now that was unusual. I was told, of course, that he took some people there. Well, we don't know, but he is receiving attention at his meetings. If the crowds are a sign of potential success, he is going to get some seats. If the crowds are genuine and it's a sign that of potential success, he is going to get some seats.
Yeah.
If for example, it's just because he's a new kid on the block, the interest generated by him, he's a philanthropist. He's been going around and publicizing his gifts. If people are there only for the money and nothing else, well, we just have to wait and see how all of that plays out.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Ramkaran, um, I invited you on the program tonight for many reasons, but one of the key reasons is that we know all the problems. We don't need to regurgitate what the problems are. What I'm seeking from you, a man of wisdom, tremendous depth and experience, knowledge, you name it in Guyana, you have faced it. So I am hoping that tonight's conversation will be more of a fatherly conversation of you leading us into an area where we could have possible solutions. I do not expect you to have solutions for everything, but I'm hoping our viewers tonight could extrapolate from this program some sort of a hope that there is a ray of light ahead of us, and mainly for the next generation. Counting our losses, Mr. Ramkaran, we've lost basically two generations since independence. The first one that led us into independence, and then the second one that was part of the big dictatorship, etc., etc. Broken families, broken homes. People migrated, people moved to secondary countries just to get to the United States. The pains are deep. But the pains are deep, not in one area, in all areas. The Afro-Guyanese pains, uh, many of them feel as if they also have suffered. Indo-Guyanese, Amerindian Guyanese. So really and truly, I'm looking to see if I could extract guidance from you, extract some sort of solution base from you. And the first thing I want to go to, and I believe you on the Election Commission many times, from listening, Mr. Alexander has been on our program many times, and then, of course, reading all the news. The GCOM situation just continues to sort of I don't want to use the word undermine, but certainly it's a structure that has not been able to lead us into what we would be a satisfied election process. Now, most political parties, when they're in opposition, constitutional reforms, etc., which is a very high fruit. Getting in the absence of constitutional reform, Mr. Ramkaran, and in absence of the politicians that are in government of the day that are not making these changes, what can us do as the nation, as a people, to kind of insist on getting some changes in GCOM?
Well, talking about GCOM specifically, there have been almost unanimous recommendations after every elections that GCOM membership should consist of non-political persons who have broad general acceptance. So that you have a chairperson who is broadly accepted, and you have six, I don't know who will nominate them. I presume the three parties, and I don't know, there are no recommendations as to how they will, what are the criteria to select non-political persons. But that is the recommendation, and that recommendation will, if implemented, it is hoped that those people will have will that the politicking that takes place at commission meetings and in relation to the work of the Elections Commission will not take place. I don't necessarily subscribe to that view. First, because the political parties are not going to agree. Political parties, especially those on the winning side, they want their own representatives there. Technically, they're not representatives of political parties, but the reality is that they act in the interests of the party that nominates them. Now, those parties are, because of the history of elections in Guyana, those political parties are very fearful that if they don't have a full grip on the electoral process, a direct say, that they're going to suffer by way of election rigging or bad decisions. Now, I think if you have independent people, that doesn't mean that they will not succumb to pressures from um, the political parties. In fact, they become under intense pressure from the political parties. And it's going to be, I'm afraid it's going to be the same. The composition of the Elections Commission is not the problem. It's the politics is the problem. We have to penetrate a little bit deeper into the issue. The, the issue is a political solution to Guyana's political problems. Guyana has two large minorities of ethnicities, two large minorities. Both have their allies. One, for the time being, gets a majority of the votes and, and appears as if it will continue to get that majority for an indefinite period of time. The other ethnicity, also a minority, feels excluded from political office. And that is the problem that has to be resolved in Guyana. That's a political problem that requires a political solution. The PPP has been advocating that since the 1970s. The PPP no longer advocates that, has no longer been advocating it since 1997, at least then. And we need to get that back on the agenda. And I'm hoping that these elections, even though it's not on the agenda for the elections, I'm hoping that after the elections that the parties will be able to find their way to deal with the governance issue. The governance issue and the political solution is different sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to encourage our viewers tonight that, they could type in or text in any valid questions for Mr. Ramkaran. We would love to share it with him, but valid questions regarding the actual topic itself. And we really want to know the viewers to know that the past couple of nights we had server issues with Facebook, and tonight we noticed some of the YouTube stream cuts. So if your stream drop, just rejoin or give it a minute, and you should be able to get back on. But definitely, we would like to encourage some of you to do post some questions for Mr. Ramkaran. It's not very often we have a person of just such distinguished accomplishment on our forum. Mr. Ramkaran, we could probably come back later on if time permits regarding the composition of what we would probably see post September 1 of how our parliament will be situated. But just moving to the next part of our topic tonight, morality and integrity within our political space, within Guyana as a whole. And as I said earlier, Mr. Ramko, and I'll probably say it many times tonight, you have seen it all. But here again, we just want to play a few things tonight just to show the state of where we at as an oil nation. We no longer being viewed from the lens of a nation that's in debt or a nation that is struggling. Everyone now is seeing us from the lens of being an oil-rich nation. So Devin, do you want to go to the video, please?
PPP will take care of you from erection to resurrection. A quick one for you. And the last time I said that, somebody came up to me and said, man, you little bias. Erection is a man thing. What happened to the women? So I got a woman thing for you. And hear me, from the moment she slime up till you get caught up, we gonna take care of you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Devin, do you have the one on Miss Amanza as well? Okay, and Mr. Ramkaran, I'm sure you're familiar with the Critic and Brian Mack's exchange a few days ago. It's 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 something that where we are a nation, we are God-fearing people, and how is it that we can be able to, or what wisdom can you lend to all of these political parties? We had the situation also with Doggy hitting the girl. Devin, I don't know if you have anything on that, but what wisdom could you share with all the political parties, not just one? I mean, that could help towards lifting our morality and integrity level within the country.
Well, those are unfortunate incidents, but thankfully they're very few. I think broadly speaking, the election campaign has been clean, has been largely incident free, though you have some lewd, um, lewd comments, lewd actions, a little bit of violence has stepped in, some rough talk, some challenging talk. But I think basically we've had a good election campaign. Um, uh, People have been generally kept to the rules. Both the PPP and the PNC have spoken extensively about policy. There have been no threats of violence. There's a minor complaints by the PNC about rigging, but nothing substantial to say that there's any policy that is likely to result in violence. So those things are inexcusable, but they happen.
Okay, and Mr. Ramkaran, going back just to the GCOM discussion we had, Mr. Albert James Kamala has suggested one person from the PPP, one from APNU, one from business, one from the religious community, one from the Amerindian community, one from youth, one from women, and they will choose the chairman. I think that's his suggestion regarding the GCOM conversation we just had. And also Mr. Rajendra Singh is asking if you have any prediction about the outcome of the election. So any comment on those two things?
Well, it's going to be very difficult to get a committee of people, first to gather the committee, first to agree on the composition, and secondly, to agree, if you get the composition, then you have the names. A very interesting thing is that during the Constitution Reform Commission of 1999, on which I sat as chairman, a law was passed on which named the different constituencies that was agreed basically between the PPP and the PNC, that the organizations representing those communities would nominate members to the Elections Commission. Then there's a second level of agreement where the parties agreed to the bodies. For example, which body would represent the trade union movement, which body would represent the Amrin community, which body would represent the Hindus, which body would represent Christians, which body would represent Muslims, which body would represent the farmers, and so on and so on. So there were two levels of agreements. One, which communities, and two, which bodies in those communities. And now that was a very significant achievement because the political parties don't agree easily. It also happened that the Elections Commission, which was the Constitution Reform Commission, which was appointed last year, the parties agreed on the same structure, the same identical structure. I don't know if the bodies were the same representing I mean, for example, I don't know if the same body representing the Amerindian community in 1999 is the same body that represents the Amerindian community last year for 2024. But that is a basis on which you might find some commonality between the two parties in terms of bodies that may nominate people. I mean, that work has been done already and is there to be repeated, modified if necessary. So if you're looking for a community, if you're looking for a group to select a chairman, that group that are represented in the Constitution Reform Commission is one possibility. It might be too unwieldy, and it can be pruned, it can be limited. But if the questioner is interested, that is something that can be looked at. And if Guyana decides to go in that direction, that is a body that can not only choose a chairman, but can choose the non-political representatives on the election commission, if agreed to by the parties. What's the second question again?
Second question was from Rajendra Singh. He was asking if there's any prediction from you on this next election.
Oh, I have a view as to who is likely to succeed and who is not likely to succeed, but I don't know if it's fair for me to give that. I'll take the plunge anyway. A lot of people have left. I mean, my views are based also on history. You know, in 2006, the AFC came on stream and was doing as well as the Win party is doing now, though there was the accusations of busing, of transporting people to the meetings was not prevalent at that time. So what the AFC did was to take away in the election results, let me go back a little, let me step back a little bit. Robert Corbyn became leader of the PNC in 2003. Hoyt died at the end of 2002. Robert Corbyn became leader of the PNC in 2003. He had a great deal of internal opposition and dissension. Now, Hoyt had that as well in 1985 when he succeeded Forbes Burnham. But Hoyt was president, so he had far more power. And the leader of a political party that holds the presidency is a very powerful person. Hoyt dealt with Hoyt also had a lot of internal critics, but he dealt with them very, very ruthlessly. One critic was Hamilton Green. He expelled Hamilton Green from the PNC, which was a major, major step. But Corbyn did not or could not deal with his critics, so that opposition festered. So when Corbyn ran for president in 2006, he lost 5 seats, and the AFC gained 5 seats. Now, if you look at the situation today, a lot of Norton has had such internal problems as well. And he has not also, like Corbyn, he has not been able to deal with those problems as ruthlessly as Hoyt did and as effectively. For what reason, I can't say, I don't know. The result of that was that a lot of those people have left the PNC. Some of them signed up for the PPP, give support to the PPP. Some of them, like Miss Desir, Miss Walton Desir, have formed their own political parties. Some of them have gone to the Win party and so on. And the number of people that Win is attracting suggests to me that the PNC might be facing similar electoral difficulties as it did in 2006, and that it might very well lose some support. The PPP has done very well in government. There are two criticisms which are being made publicly by people. One is that a lot of poverty still exists. They haven't been able to touch the poverty issue very significantly, in significant ways. And secondly, people are saying that corruption is increasing. Now, whether the PPP will, those things have occurred in previous elections. Those criticisms have been made of the PPP in previous elections. And it did not, apart from 2011, it did not significantly affect the results of the elections. Maybe those were the factors in 2011 that caused it to lose. But the PPP looks as if it will be returned with a majority. Some people say with PPP people say with a substantial majority, and some observers like Freddie Kissoon and others say that it will come back, it will get a few more seats, but not a substantial majority. Seems to me it will come back with a majority, but there's one proviso I'd like to add to that. How well will Win do? Will Win take away a sufficient number of votes from the PPP to bring it into minority status? I don't think it will. The people shown in its meetings are not there are many Indians, but they're not a substantial amount of Indians. Taking into account the ethnic voting patterns in Guyana, I don't think it will take away enough of PPP support if those Indians are former PPP supporters to do any serious harm to the PPP. So that's how I think it will play out.
Yeah, yeah. And Mr. Ramkaran, thank you for those projection from your side. On that note of internal challenges within the political parties, a lot of PPP members, PPP supporters I speak to, and I was brought up within the Indo-Guyanese community. Naturally, PPP is what we know growing up. And a lot of them have been looking and talking, and there are some concerns which probably I may ask you to address. Devin, could you just pull up the PPP internal committee election? Could you just pull that up? This is from May 2024, Mr. Ramkaran. Now, if you look at the top of the list, of course, you have the president, you have the vice president, Mr. Mustafa, and you go down to the top 10. someone, a stalwart like Anil Nandalal is moved to number 9. A person that has so much respect within the PPP uh, committees, someone like Dr. Frank Anthony, former President Donald Ramutar, he went down to 26. Says Ganraj down to 33. The Vidyanandan girl, Miss Prasad, went down to 31. And quite honestly and quite frankly, from what they've been saying to me, some of them are concerned about some of the characters that has moved up within the top 10. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, um, you know, Fenton Ramsay in 1960, I don't know whether 62 or 63. There were famous or rather infamous elections in the PVP, which was contested by Balram Singh Rai. In those days, they elected officials individually, and Balram Singh Rai decided to contest the elections for chairman, and his opponent was Brinley Ben, and the PVP and the PVP's leadership supported Brinley Ben. And Balram Singh Rai lost the elections. And for some reason, I don't know the exact reason, Fenton Ramsay commented, and it became a very famous commented, that the PVP works in devious ways. So, so the elections in the PVP, in my experience, in the days of Balram Singh Rai, and in the elections that you're referring to, if it was 2024, are substantially based, the results of the elections are substantially based on how much campaigning you do. And there's also the question of how much campaigning is done against you. Now, you might not be campaigning, but other people are campaigning. And those people may well take away votes in their campaign, take away votes that would normally have gone to you and bring you down. Now, in 2008, I have always, in Central Committee elections, I never campaigned, and I don't think anybody ever campaigned against me. But I always came between 1 and 10 in Central Committee elections at PVP Congress. But in 2008, leading up to 2008, I was having great difficulty, great disputes in the leadership of the PVP. I'm not saying with the leadership, but within the leadership, individuals within the leadership. And I was brought down to 28. I came at 28. Now they were campaigning all over the compound of the school where the things were held against me. It was campaigning within the Amerindian groups against me. Amerindian groups who hardly knew me, but they were given this name. So that is how the election was. Sometimes people campaign against you individually. Sometimes they campaign for other people, and they affect your votes. So it's very difficult. I don't think Nandalal bringing 10th place is significant. They have people who, the 10 people above him are people who are very popular. They might not appear to the public to be, but within the PPP they are. Take Zulfikar, who came right up at the top. Zulfikar was the executive secretary of the PPP for a number of years, for many years. He is known from the length and breadth of the country by all PPP members and supporters. So there's an explanation of why he came very high.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Ramkaran. Thank you for that clarity. I brought it up mainly because it's a conversation that's been happening parallel So, and it's within many, many PPP former members, former supporters, and even current supporters in terms of the way that the results came out from the last internal elections. I want to move to transparency, if you don't mind. And again, I want to encourage our viewers tonight. Please, if you would like to text in any specific questions for Mr. Ramkaran, I would love to share it with him. And just before I go to the next part of our topic tonight, just one of my usual announcements that our Guyanese brothers and sisters to help us to achieve the goals and vision of Globespan, to help us to build a society that is much more informed from all sides, a society where one can change from within so as to affect the changes on the outside, a society that can reason together, a society that can work to keep hope alive. Our vision is a country where its moral and ethical compass are directed by the Word of God. Help build a Guyana where all Afro, Indo, Amerindians, and all races value each other as equal human beings. Imagine a Guyana where her wealth becomes your wealth. So, to all of our viewers, those who join us every night or whenever we have our Globespan program, I'm asking you to join us too with the vision of Globespan. And that does not negate us or preclude us in any way from asking questions or being up, how do you say, one of the main thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ramkaran, Dr. Chedi Jagan, the founding father, one of the founding father of Guyana, and the founding person for the PPP, he always also believed in objective criticism or critical support. And there are many times in Globespan, if it is that we dare to criticize something about any of the political party, we then cast as being anti-PPP or anti-APNU or anti-this or anti-that. It doesn't allow us, our public space really does not allow us to express our internal thinking. And that's an important factor for us. Would you care to just comment on that for a minute or so?
Well, that's quite true. That's quite accurate. If you criticize political parties, you get you get painted. I wouldn't say tainted, but you get painted as this, that, or the other. And it's unfortunate, you know. My experience with the PPP, I wrote an article in 2012 on corruption. And I didn't criticize the PPP about corruption. I said that corruption is increasing in the country, and there was a reason for it. The reason was that it is increasing because the state expenditure on infrastructure is increasing. And where you have a situation where contracts are handed out to the public on a competitive basis, you find that people find ways to get around that. They do so now. They get contracts by unfair means. Now, I wrote that and I said, and I wrote encouraging the government to take additional steps that they had already taken on corruption, to take those further steps. I was kicked out of the PPP for that. I was kicked out of the PPP. Now,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't tell me to resign, they didn't expel me, but the kind of criticisms that I encountered made it impossible for me to sit with the people who made those assertions against my character. So I felt it. What you're saying, I felt it, you know? So it's an unfortunate situation that people cannot be objectively critical. For example, Vice President Barjagdeo made a criticism of the Stabrook News editorial, of the Stabrook News newspaper in relation to Azruddin Mohammed. Now, the Stabrook News editorial responded to that criticism, and very powerfully so. So, even though even a newspaper that has a lot of substance in what it does and has a history behind it is not immune to political criticism. The APNU criticizes the Chronicle, I mean, every week. When APNU was in power, the Chronicle was doing the same thing that it's doing now.
Yeah.
The way it's supporting the government now, it supported the APNU government when it was in power. So it's a difficult situation to deal with, but unfortunately it exists.
Yeah, and Miss Vishwa Rekha certainly second what you're saying, because she said, Mr. Singh, fortunately or fortunately, that's how politics work all over the world. So in order for us to be objective, we have to be able to withstand some of this. I know, Mr. Ramkaran, when we started Globespan 6 years ago, PNC members were saying Nohar is a PPP in sheep's clothing. Don't worry, wait and see. Nohar gonna come out with his true colors. PPP now brand me as something else, and now I see some of their trolls, and they have a lot of trolls on these trolls are here just to badger you and make negative comments, and I don't know how much they're being paid, but certainly the option to be objective is worthwhile in trying to reshape the way Guyana goes. So on the issue of transparency, you mentioned your June 12th, the article that you wrote. I'd like to go to a video on Mr. Ratan from Singapore. Devin, could you go to that video for me, please?
Back long time, that if you want to, in a sense, eliminate corruption in a society, and we all want to eliminate corruption in a society, the most effective way to do it is to make sure you don't punish people at the bottom, you punish people at the top. I'll tell you one story. In the 1960s, when Singapore was a very poor country then, our per capita income was 500. A government minister was invited by a businessman to go on holiday. Just a holiday, no bride. He and his family went on holiday with a businessman. He came back, he was arrested, charged, went to jail. After that, no more corruption. Because it's a very powerful signal that is sent when you go after someone at the top. So Singapore's experience, and it's actually quite remarkable how you have almost zero corruption in Singapore, is because we decided that the example must come from the top.
Mr. Ramkaran, in that context there, I also want to add some of the dimensions that we're dealing with in Guyana. Mr. Christopher Ram has been filing court filings for information that been withheld. If you talk about corruption, they push back very quickly. Where's the proof? Show the proof. Show the proof. If you're not getting information, you naturally cannot show any proof. And then, of course, when there are any accusations, there's no really true due diligence to say if someone is really guilty or not guilty. It just dies off. The charges are just dies off. The accusations are just dies off. And we have never seen any really truly our politicians held accountable for the situations that we have faced in Guyana. What would be your advice and guidance as we go forward as a new nation, as an oil wealth nation? What would be your guidance there?
Well, we have to continue to advocate, one, against corruption, and two, for measures to prevent corruption. For example, there are no measures, the government itself, there is no known principles. There are no known principles on the receipt of gifts, for example. There are no known definition of what is a gift. The Singapore person was talking about a minister going on holiday with some businessmen. Now, clearly, if he was imprisoned, one of the reasons was that he received a gift, a holiday. So there is no definition of a gift. There is no definition of how much a minister can receive, the quality, the quantity, or the value of a gift that the minister can receive. Now, in the UK, there is a protocol. It is not, I don't think it's a legally enforceable protocol, but it's a protocol. And the protocol is managed by a person. There's a person who determines whether a minister has committed a violation of that protocol, and it's so highly regarded and recognized that if this person finds a minister has violated the protocol, he would have to resign. Now, there's no such thing here. There is no, at least it's not known. So anybody can receive a gift. There's no definition of corruption. What is corruption? What is regarded as corruption? And one would have thought that that's a basic thing. You know, I remember I was a small boy, very small, very young, when my father became a minister in the government. And the first Christmas, this was in 1957. The first Christmas, a whole load of gifts came, mainly from business people, wrapped up in nice Christmas paper and so on. And there was a lot of them, a dozen or more. I can't really remember. But we were all excited, of course. My father instructed us not to open the gifts. Don't trouble them, to put them aside. And I remember that they were packed up in our veranda. And sometime after, I don't recall how long after, the gifts were sent back to the people who sent them. And we never received any gifts thereafter from any business people. Now, those are the standards you must maintain. That's what the PPP, that's the history of the PPP. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anybody who would remember that. Maybe Robeson Ben might remember it. I don't think his father was a minister in 1957, but I don't think there's anybody around. Joey Jagan may remember, and a few others. The Biharis, the Bihari family. No, the Bihari children are no longer around. So those were the standards which were set. We have that history, and they can be set again.
And Mr. Ramkhan, who sets those standards now? Is it that the people have to continue to
If the
advocate?
if the government is unwilling to set those standards, the government is in denial. We have to pressure the government to set those standards.
So
And
you would think,
I talked about my theory in 2012 was the more government expenditure, the more opportunities exist for corruption. Now, under the Hoyt government, the expenditure on infrastructure was 2 billion Guyana dollars. When I wrote my article in 2012, the government expenditure on infrastructure was 20 billion Guyana dollars. And that was the argument I was making. That increase in expenditure is an invitation to corruption unless steps are taken to prevent it. What's the government expenditure on infrastructure today? Hundreds, I don't know the exact sum, but it's hundreds of billions of dollars.
yeah.
So imagine the opportunity has been created, and no new law, excuse me, no new law has been passed between 2012 and today to deal with any issue of corruption.
Yeah. And, Mr. Ramkaran, on that note of expenditures from, I believe, 2021 to 2025 budget is over $4.5 trillion. Mr. Sheikh Abraham wrote, is it something in the Constitution that allows it to happen? I'm sure it's not in the Constitution, but I guess I should flip the question around and ask, is there something in the Constitution that allow the people to hold the government to a higher standard in terms of transparency? Is there something in there, Mr. Ramkaran?
Well, there's nothing specific in the Constitution to hold the government to account to transparency, but there's the Parliament and the rules of the National Assembly allow members of Parliament to ask questions uh, to elicit answers to questions. I see things in the press, criticisms of the government, various things, but I don't see any follow-up in the Parliament. Questions are not asked. There's certainly no publicity.
Yeah, no, of course, that brings to a question there within many people's mind is that if there's some sort of quid pro quo that goes on when one government leaves and the other comes, when they're in opposition, there's always that talk of taking them to court, holding them liable, putting them in jail. When they get into government, nothing happens, and it just goes back and forth. And at the ending of the day, we still have, close to 50% of our population living in poverty. And of course, the other 35% are barely making it. Now that we're heading into an oil economy, certainly there must be a better share for the people and some way of being able to curtail any of these type of corruption. The census, no one knows what the census is. It's been over 3 years now. Contracts are issued there, as I mentioned. Junior Batch did a video. We don't know what if it's true or not. There's no follow up in any of the accusations of corruption. We also, Mr. Ramkaran, we have huge projects taking place within the infrastructure environment, but yet we're not seeing feasibility studies. Um, and some of these projects, the numbers just keep increasing. How do we solve all of this in given your experience and knowledge? I mean, how do we, I wouldn't say solve, but how could we curtail this?
Well, I mean, we just have to keep asking questions. We, the public, members of the public, have to keep asking questions. Members of parliament in the opposition have to keep asking questions, and the government has to be held to account. That's the job of the press, the public, and and the parliament to hold the government to account. And the government can't complain. I mean, governments don't like criticisms. Who like criticisms? But that's our job. We're taxpayers. We're members of the public. We're entitled to
Good.
accountability. And we cannot allow this or any other government to behave in a way that is not transparent or is not accountable. And you're right, the expenditure, lots of projects are going on, and the expenditures are happening above our heads, and we don't have any accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hope the trolls on tonight program are hearing what you're saying, Mr. Ramkaran. We need to hold government, and it doesn't matter which government is the government of the day, accountable to the people. And we need to press forward. We need to be able to continue to have some sort of voice within the nation. So for all the trolls tonight who are looking to badger and name you, I mentioned earlier they thought I was a PPP in sheep clothing, and PPP thought I was someone else. There's some tonight, Mr. Ramkaran is trying to paint me as a Mohammed supporter now. But of course, in the 6 years, we have been able to show that our platform is open to all voices, and this is something I want to continue to press forward on. On that same note, Mr. Ramkaran, budgets are passed, winner takes all. Uh, in that case there of budgets have passed and winner takes all, we at the brink of what may be a possible minority government. Possibility. Timothy Jonas was on last night, and he did a fantastic piece of what a minority government will probably mean in the operation of Parliament. Do you mind if we just play that video so we could probably have a little discussion on that?
The fact is, in Parliament, you can't pass a law unless the president assents. Good. But you can refuse to pass any other law until the president assents to the law you want. So the president wants a budget so that he can implement his road building and his cash handouts. And you can say no. And you can say to the government, when you approve my act, which puts 3 opposition members on the Public Procurement Commission so they can see how you're spending the money, then I will approve your budget. When you approve my act, which removes state control of all media and mandates the sale of the Chronicle and NCM, then I will pass your budget. And when you approve my act, which mandates that any government-owned company like Guyana and GPL and the GRDB must be represented by a board appointed half by the opposition and half by you, so that there is transparency on those boards, then I will pass your budget. Now, all of those changes, let me go with some more. When you approve my act to reform the NIS, so that the people who need the cash that we now have so much of are receiving it in a systemic and orderly manner and not as a cash handout, then I will pass your budget. If each of those proposals, when you approve my act, putting opposition members on Central Housing and Planning Board so that when they handing out house lots, it's not being done by bribing ministers and people internally, but it's being done by a system that has the approval of both PNC and PPP and the third party, or I will not pass your budget. If each of those proposed pieces of legislation is informed to the public and explained to the public, then every time the president refuses to assent and says, no, only my people must be on Central Housing, only my people must be on GPL, the public will begin to understand. And the next elections, when you don't approve his budget, he may find himself out of government altogether. So I agree with Vincent. It has got to be done carefully, openly, transparently, and boldly by the third party, with the knowledge that if the government of the day is obdurate, you will go back to election soon, but you will go back stronger. Because we know the government of the day won by 1 seat. It will not take a lot if the people are saying, but these are good measures. Why do you have a problem with allowing both sides to be present in seeing how you're dealing with the oil money and in your natural resources fund and how you're allocating it and how much money you borrow in to build these roads and who you're awarding the contracts to? Why can't everybody see how this is happening? If the third party shows that to the public, that this is what the laws are about, this is how we're trying to pass the laws, that 1 seat majority, that 1 seat or half a seat that the government, the minority government has, they might lose even that. So it empowers the third party. It gives them more force. It shows the public that you are doing something good, and it puts the government in a difficult position to reject laws that are obviously fair and designed to create what is truly a one Guyana in our fractured society. That's the way to do it.
So, Mr. Ramkaran, this was in the context of, in absence of pro-advocacy, transparency, accountability, in the absence of having a very robust sort of structure within the framework of our politician or our government. That discussion was more in the context of a minority government, a third party having certain amount of seats, that whereby they could be able to hold the presiding government accountable to the nation and to also what they represent as a third party. What would be your feelings on that? Is this a short-term solution, medium-term solution in absence of constitutional reform?
Guyana has had experience of a minority government between 2011 and 2015. The minority government did not work. It did not succeed. It lost office in 2015. It spent 3 years in office. It did not get the cooperation of the opposition. It was only able to pass a truncated budget. Its major project, which started under the previous government, the Amila Falls, could not move forward because it did not obtain the support of the unanimous support of the National Assembly. So we have had our experience of a minority government. What we have not had is what people may have learned from that experience is that if you go into a minority in the National Assembly, it would be sensible, it would be a sensible thing, one, to either have an agreed program with the opposition or to form a coalition government. And I don't think a government can exist in the same manner in which a government existed in 2011 to 2015. If we have a minority government this time around, and the government refuses to develop an agreed program with the opposition so that the opposition can support its whatever it is, people on boards, people in committees, special laws to be passed, whatever it is, unless there's an agreed program or a coalition government, a minority government standing on its own will not work.
Yeah.
Because the following year, every year you have to have a budget. If there's no budget, there's no government. The opposition does not have to support the budget. If it doesn't support the budget, the government can't spend money, and it has to hold elections. So a minority government is not going to work. Can never work. And if the PPP tries it again, the same thing that happened in 2011 will happen again.
And this would be in absence of a framework that they could work out with the opposition.
It happens all over the world. In Europe, in the whole of Western Europe and parts of Eastern Europe, you don't have majority governments. All the governments are minority. In Germany today, there's a coalition government. Parties do not get 51% of the votes in Europe. Only a few countries, Great Britain, occasionally Germany, France, occasionally France, you have you can have a president with a French assembly that does not have majority support for the president. So I don't know why Guyana would be any different.
Yeah, yeah. Now there's quite a few countries that are working very fine with minority governments. Norway, Sweden, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, Finland, Ireland, the United Kingdom, as you mentioned, Canada, and our fatherland, India itself, basically
As a minority
as
government.
minority government, and they have all been able to build out a framework where it works for the government and it works for the opposition, so the country in itself can be able to benefit. So there's much to be say there about that. I know you're very young, you're getting younger, Mr. Ramkaran, and I don't want to keep you on too long. There was a question here, but I think the question would probably be best answered on a different night with you. It's from Sheikh Abraham again. He was asking the top 5 things you would like to see change in the Constitution. But I do think that's something for another night. Um, I want to continue onwards with what would be, I mean, in terms of your advice, with all the wisdom that you have for this new generation, this younger group of people, and many of them feel disenfranchised. You mentioned of them earlier. They don't feel like they have a fair share of the economy. How, what advice or wisdom would you want to share with them as we go into this election and for the next term?
Well, I think the opportunities for young people are actually increasing. the opportunities for education, and the opportunities for employment, if not formal academic education, for technical education. And the opportunities are truly increasing, and young people should take advantage of the opportunities that are available. There are the gold scholarships, the University of Guyana. Guyana has been doing better in education. A lot of money is being spent on education. So while there might be some difficulty still with youth unemployment, you see it in the recent violence we had uh, as a result of the child Young, Miss Young, um, Andrea Young, who was allegedly drowned. After the postmortem report came out, there was a spate of violence. That's some kind of indication that there's some dissatisfaction existing there. But I would urge that young people can take advantage of the opportunities that are available. It's not easy to get skilled people, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah. Mr. Ramkaran, just a comment by Mr. John C. And Mr. John C. is saying that for too long, Guyana has been caught in a tug of war between two political parties that speak of service but deliver self-interest. While they argue, the people wait. Those tired of waiting migrate. And on that note of migration, even though oil has come above ground in 2022, the migration still continues. You walk in Richmond Hill, a lot of people are saying, let them keep the oil money. We just want security or want peace. What is it that we could do more that could be able to keep Guyanese from migrating? Because when you look at the statistics, you still have combined between UK, Canada, United States, something about 7,000 people a year that's migrating. Any comments or any?
Well, the migration is not going to stop if even if it might slow down a little bit because of the family tie, the family ties. This family ties is an extremely powerful pull to make people go abroad. And things are not, Guyana is still a developing country. Things are not all rosy here. The oil wealth has not filtered down, has not substantial enough, has not filtered down to make it um, feasible for people to remain. For example, generations of Guyanese um, who have grown up have look. I have staff in my office who were messengers, who were messengers and who rose to senior positions, not by education but by on the job experience. No, I know at least one of them who has been sponsored. What is he to do? I mean, he has no skills that will get him to any position in Guyana, earn enough to reach a position in Guyana equivalent to what he will get in the United States. Now, there are many, many, many people like that waiting on their papers, so to speak. And there's no way to keep them here. So we have to wait on the next generation of Guyanese for this migration um, flow out of Guyana to stop, to ease down, and then to eventually to stop. It's a
Yeah,
it's a generational problem. It's not a problem that will be solved by us.
yeah. And to all of our viewers tonight, normally Globespan is usually on Mondays and Wednesdays, but for this week here, we're trying to sustain programs basically every night. So we'll be on again tomorrow night at 7:30. As I mentioned, Mr. Ramkaran, of course, is getting younger. We don't want to keep him for the full 90 minutes as we usually do. But I really want to be able to thank you, Mr. Ramkaran. Your wisdom, your service to the country has been tremendous. Your conviction in terms of bringing about changes, has displayed itself year after year. You've come under a lot of criticism certain part of your career, but I think your legacy now speaks for itself. You're a person that stood for what is right, what is wrong. You stood for the country and you stood for the people. So in saying that to you, could you leave us with some hopes, some closing comments with some hopes in terms of Guyana being a better Guyana for all its children?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you very much for your kind words about me. I think that we should strive to make these elections really meaningful for the Guyanese people. We have, in the past few years, in terms of this government, see the potential, only the potential, not the reality yet, the potential of what an oil economy can mean for Guyana down the road. And we should make all effort, each individual should make as much efforts as we can to make the oil economy work for all of us, the poor, the sick, and those who are struggling. Those are the people who need upliftment first. The rich, wealthy don't need upliftment. And I wish the government would, in the last few days, say something about those in the condition of extreme poverty. But be that as it may, I hope that the elections will bring us together and that the government will see the possibility, any government that emerges from the elections, will see the possibility of resolving our political problems for the benefit of all Guyanese people. Unless that core issue is resolved at some time in the near future, Guyanese will not enjoy the full benefit of the oil wealth which we will be able to, which we will have coming to us as we move forward.
And Mr. Ramkaran, you'll be happy to hear that you did answer Mr. Randir Prasad, because he asked earlier, asked Mr. Ramkaran about PPP manifesto, nothing for improvement of poverty. So, and then he just typed here while you were talking, extreme poverty, well said. So I think you were able to answer one of his comments there. I would like to also welcome again Mr. Colin Singh from Canada. There is not a Globespan program that I have been on that Mr. Colin Singh has not joined. Truly appreciated, all viewers. Let's keep God in mind. Let us be able to pray for our nation, for a better country for all. And I know some of you feel that you do have. And I guess, Mr. Ramkaran, this is one last thing I probably want to leave off with you tonight. It kind of puzzles me to the extent where if I belong to a specific political party and I want that political party to have longevity in government and being able to govern with effectiveness for all the country, don't I have that right to be able to agree to disagree, question certain things within the parties to make it a much more healthier party? I mean, what we see is that as soon as you say something, these people just want to shut you up. You're not even allowed to express. I mean, go
Well,
ahead, Mr.
the
Ramkaran.
politics have developed differently in countries like ours, where there's a certain rigidity in terms of disagreeing. You know, in the big countries like in the UK and the US, they have it to some extent. In the United Kingdom, there's a parliamentary whip. You can't vote again. There's sanctions that can be applied if you vote against your party in important matters. In the United States, the umbrella is larger. You can disagree with your party publicly. In countries like Guyana, developing countries, we haven't reached that level of maturity as yet, where a person can be critical of a party and still remain a member. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. You can criticize internally, but not externally.
Not externally. Yeah, and you'll be happy to hear it looks like Shivnarayan Prasad wants to hear you keep talking. I should not be making excuses to bring the program to an end. So I suppose he loves what you're saying. And Vishwa Rekha text as well. Dr. Jagan dreamt and struggled for a national patriotic front and a national patriotic front government. And I believe also, and would be correct to say, Mr. Ramkaran, unless you correct me, Dr. Jagan, the principal objective for all that he undertake with men like you and all the other good stalwart of Guyana was for the working class people.
Yeah.
On that note there,
That's
any last words, Mr. Ramkaran? I know Mr. Shivnarayan Prasad wants to hear you talk a little more, but any more few words before we go?
Well, I think, well, first I would like to thank your viewers, those who have taken the time off to listen to what I have to say, what we have to say, and those who have taken the trouble of making comments and asking questions. Cherry Jagan believed in the poor. He was his, pur- his purpose in life, his objective in life from his earliest days was the poor. The ideology that he had, which many people don't agree, even including people who like him and who supported him. The objective of his ideology, whether you agree with it or not, was to uplift the poor. His objective of a political solution for Guyana was to uplift the poor because he frequently said, unless there is political peace, the poor, we cannot improve the economy. If there's a divided country, it will not grow economically. The people will be fighting among themselves rather than fighting to build a country. So he saw his life's mission to develop, to eliminate poverty in Guyana, and eventually to eliminate poverty in the world. And he deeply believed that it was possible. That was his objective, and it's good for us to remind ourselves and each other about Jagan's objective for the PPP and for all of us.
Well said. So, Mr. Hari Narayan Raf Ramkaran, God grace to you, blessings all the time. We truly appreciate your sacrifices. On behalf of myself and so many other Guyanese, we thank you for your contribution. Have a good night, sir.
Good. Thank you very much indeed.